Hey, welcome to this forecast for Monday, January 13th through Sunday, January 19th, 2025. This week is a very powerful week. There are a lot of really exciting signs in the astrology. So let's talk about it. So, why do I say that? So, for one, I think the energy has been building, and building. It reminds me of one of those toy cars that you like press on the ground and you like pull it back. So it's like we've been pulling back, and the more you pull back, the more momentum it builds up, right? The more it wants to go forward. So I think that's kind of like what we've been doing the last month or so, really the last 2 months. For much of December, we had Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, and that was pretty wild because Mercury is opposing Jupiter. Both were in detriment, both were retrograde, both were in mutual reception. So that was building up the energy, and it was very strange having those detriment and retrograde placements. And then more recently, we've also had Mars also retrograde. Mars also retrograde opposing Pluto. So I think that was building up a lot of intense pressure as well. So now finally that energy is being released. That toy car is being released, so to speak, and we are zooming ahead for multiple reasons. One of those is Mercury. Mercury is fully direct now, has been for a few weeks. Mercury is now in Capricorn, completely moving forward. It's actually cruising very quickly. So that suggests that we are moving ahead very quickly. We're learning a lot. We're in new territory. Also, with the Sun in Capricorn, really now for the last few weeks, Sun will actually enter Aquarius later this week. But Capricorn, I've really had a different view on the sign of Capricorn this year. In some ways, it actually does make sense that we start our calendar year with the Sun in Capricorn, because Capricorn is the first sign where the light is returning. So in a way, Capricorn really is the sign where everything begins, where that solar cycle begins. It's almost like kind of like a new moon, because it does represent the darkest phase, yet at the same time that is where the light starts coming back. So very powerful. That's another indicator that we are gaining momentum, gaining energy here. And something interesting too, so as we start out this week, we're going to have a full moon in Cancer conjunct Mars, and there's also a lot of water energy. There's lots of water placements, water planets. With starting out the week, we'll have 5 planets in water. So really combining all these water placements with Sun and Mercury in Capricorn, to me that suggests that we are focused on building something new. But there's a lot of emotion in it. There's a lot of spirit. I think in December, many of us kind of went on our own journey, so to speak. We were each sort of trapped in our own little worlds. And that was really great because it allowed us to process a great deal and really look at ourselves in a deep way. But now we are moving forward. Now is the exciting part where we can jump ahead and really experience something new based on whatever it was that we figured out last month during that really. I think it was a much darker time for many of us last month. So really exciting stuff. Let's get into it here. I did want to just make a couple of notes real quick. So last week I was talking about Mars, how on January 13th we're going to have Moon passing directly over Mars. So at the same time that the Moon is conjunct Mars, it will be occulting it. The occultation will happen January 13th. And you would think, well, doesn't that happen every time Moon conjoins a planet? And actually, no. It has to do with the nodes, but that actually is rare. That if you are looking at the sky January 13th, you may be able to see the Moon directly passing over Mars, almost like kind of eclipsing it, I guess you could say. So that is definitely worth mentioning. Also, January 15th through 16th, Mars will be at its opposition, which basically means Mars will be as close to the Earth as possible. So it's really interesting how Mars is retrograde and in fall. So Mars is really debilitated. It's in a really strange, kind of wacky place. Yet at the same time, Mars is, because it's reaching its opposition this week, that means that at least on some level, its energy is actually peaking and reaching its high point. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on. I think we're really rethinking our ambitions and our desires, and this is all. It's very personal to each one of us. Detriment or fall placements tend to be very isolating, but also very independent. We can reach our own conclusions with fall placements. So with Mars in fall and retrograde, we're really processing a lot when it comes to those ambitions. In other news, Moon will be transiting from Cancer through Libra this week, and I've said before that this is a really good region for the Moon to be in. Moon does pretty well in all these signs: Cancer, Leo, Virgo, and Libra. But like I said too, we will have that full moon at the start of the week. That's the biggest event when it comes to the moon here. And there is something really funky that happens at the end of the week as well. There's like a 3-planet aspect that we'll talk about. Okay, so let's get into it. So, starting with Monday, January 13th, this is probably the most volatile day of the week. This is where we have that full moon in Cancer at 24 degrees, and it is pretty close to that conjunction with Mars, since Mars will only be about 3 degrees away from the full moon. So really powerful stuff, really interesting. It's highlighting the Capricorn Cancer axis, Moon 24 Cancer opposing Sun at 24 Capricorn. So it's interesting. I think the Cancer Capricorn axis is all about building stability, building a home, building a structure. We're wanting structure, yet because this is a full moon, that suggests that there's some kind of climax, there's some kind of culmination. The same day, the Sun will also trine Uranus at 23 degrees Taurus. So that also means this full moon is sextiling Uranus as well. So really interesting stuff. There is some kind of harmony there with the unpredictability. It's really strange. So we're wanting to build a structure. I think with so many planets in Pisces and Sun and Mercury in Capricorn, again, there's this combination of Capricorn wanting to be sturdy and like, let's make some realistic plans and goals. Let's make some guidelines. Let's build the structure and think about the long term. Let's be responsible and productive. Yet at the same time, there's this huge emotional intelligence with all the Pisces placements and with, of course, the Cancer full moon. Moon is in domicile here. Moon is very strong, being both in domicile and full at the same time. So there's this huge emotional focus, emotional awareness. There's huge intuition here. So I think this is really excellent when it comes to maybe redefining our goals, when it comes to planning things. We can plan not only from a practical standpoint, but also with that emotional intelligence, that intuition, that inspiration as well. Really, with so much going on in Pisces and Capricorn, these signs do actually have some things in common. Both are winter signs, so both have the light like returning and increasing throughout them. So they're both, in other words, I think they both have like a deep sense of optimism. They both believe in kind of like the future, so to speak. Okay, what else? Full moon in Cancer. Yeah, I think this is going to be a big one. Definitely some kind of huge culmination. You can look more specifically to where does 24 Cancer fall in your chart, because that's where there is a turning point. Rethinking those goals, setting up new goals, and using that emotional intelligence in the process. I could see us being very defensive with this full moon as well, because both Capricorn and Cancer, they want that like shell, they want that barrier, so to speak. Cancer can put up walls, it can be very defensive for sure. So yeah, very intense stuff, and it's kind of just moon energy on steroids. So the moon is not it's not a benefic or a malefic. It's not overwhelmingly positive or negative, and that's why things are just so generally crazy when we get a full moon or when we get really strong moon energy, because it's not super clear. There may just be chaos. There may be really good things happening, maybe not so good things happening. It just tends to be very chaotic in general, and this will be especially chaotic with the conjunction to Mars. There could be volatility or accidents. And hopefully not. I don't say these things to scare you. I just say these things to, maybe be cautious on Monday. Maybe, I don't know, think twice before you say something or make a bold move. Because, honestly, it could be dangerous. Mars, especially Mars oppositions or conjunctions, they tend to be pretty vile. And with the Mars opposition itself happening so close to this as well, it does look volatile. So, okay, in short, there's this combination of really great practicality, really great emotional intelligence, but also there is something volatile about it as well, for sure. Definitely the most volatile day of the week, let's put it that way. Tuesday, January 14th, Moon continues through Cancer, and then early in the day, Eastern Time, Moon will actually enter Leo. And so, of course, the vibe does change quite a bit with Moon in Leo, but it's still a pretty strong Moon. You know, Moon, like I said, it does pretty well in Leo, generally speaking, and Moon will still be pretty full at this point, too. So there's still lots of activity, lots of energy, maybe lots of drama. Yeah, really, this chart is interesting because we have just so much water, and then now with the Leo Moon, both Leo Moon and the Pisces planets, Neptune, Saturn, Venus, they're all they can all be a little bit dramatic. So yeah, it's really unusual for a Capricorn season. We don't usually have this much water with the Sun in Capricorn. But anyway, there is one aspect today that would be Venus squaring Jupiter. So Venus, once it reaches 12 Pisces late in the day, does square Jupiter at 12 Gemini. So that just shows that it looks like we're really desiring, we have a lot of variety when it comes to what we desire. You know, Venus and Jupiter are both the great benefics. They have to do with what we find pleasurable, what we value, where our joy is, so to speak. And with both of them squaring each other from mutable signs, it shows that we're wanting kind of a little bit of everything. We're wanting to try everything. And, you know, Venus in Pisces is much more spiritual. It's exalted, which I think is a blessing because Jupiter in Gemini is in detriment, and it's still retrograde until February 4th. So there's some kind of conflict there with, you know, what do we desire? Where's the abundance? It's coming at us from multiple directions. We may have to make a choice. This could be a crossroads, especially if you do have major placements at around 12 degrees of the mutable signs. So Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, or Gemini. You know, Jupiter in Gemini showing we want to be intellectual and try everything on a kind of mental level. Venus in Pisces is more, you know, spiritual, more emotional. Let's try everything on a more imaginative level. So we can do both, of course, but it is a lot. You know, a mutable square like this, it's so scattered, it's so frenetic. But yeah, this will especially be relevant for those of you that have those placements at 12 of the mutable signs. January 16th, Moon continues through Leo, and oh, sorry, I skipped a day. So Wednesday, January 15th, that's what we're talking about. This is where the Sun actually opposes Mars, and Moon continues through Leo still. So with Sun opposite Mars, I think this is a big deal because Mars has had so much pent-up energy. You know, most planets, I think, indicate we are moving forward, as I said in the intro. But Mars is still going retrograde, right? Mars is one of the only planets that are retrograde. Mars, Uranus, Jupiter. So this means that this energy is still building. It's still very internalized. It's internally building. But I think this is especially true because of the recent Mars opposition with Pluto. You know, whenever we have, what do they call it, like a secondary aspect, like, you know, Mars has been opposing Pluto, but now with Sun opposing Mars, that may be kind of an outlet that may release some of that pent-up energy from the Pluto-Mars opposition. So in some ways, we may actually feel that Pluto-Mars opposition more now with this opposition from the Sun than we did from the actual Pluto opposition itself. The same goes for the full moon on Monday, by the way, as well. A lot of intensity, a lot of volatility coming from Mars. But again, with Mars debilitated and retrograde, it's not the normal volatility. It's not so black and white. It's very deep. It's pressurized. It's maybe very internal, and it may be very emotional as well. So really deep, really heavy, and strange, honestly. But again, you know, Sun opposing Mars, that can suggest violent accents. That can suggest people lashing out. But it's very pressurized. It's very internalized. So definitely heavy stuff. And I think this can be stressful, especially if you do have placements around 26 of the cardinal signs. So Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, or Libra. any placements around there, there's going to be friction, tension. There's going to be maybe frustration building up. There could also be passion building up, though. Momentum, inspiration, or bravery. Maybe Mars isn't all bad. It can definitely be positive. And again, these may be very like independent feelings of passion or ambition that are building up. So that can be powerful too. This can be very revealing. But again, it can also be tense, stressful. I would say proceed with caution, really through much of this week, honestly, because there is that tension there for sure. Okay, Thursday, January 16th, Moon continues through Leo, and it actually enters Virgo today around, right around noon Eastern time. So this is nice because, Moon is not trining the Sun by aspect, but at least they're in signs that trine one another. Moon and Virgo tends to blend very readily, very harmoniously with Sun and Capricorn. Suddenly there's a big Earth focus, which I think is really beautiful because we still have a huge water focus. We have 4 planets in water signs: Neptune, Saturn, Venus in Pisces, Mars in Cancer. So now with 4 planets in Earth signs, Uranus and Taurus, Sun, Mercury, Capricorn, and then now Moon in Virgo, I think this is really beautiful. The Earth and the water elements blend together very complementary, very harmoniously. The water adds that nourishing energy and that, emotion, the intuition, the imagination, but the earth grounds it. The earth, provides a structure, and the earth provides that practicality too. So I think this is really beautiful. We may feel a little bit more calm going into Thursday compared to how we did at the first few days of the week. Especially with that full moon and Mars doing everything that it was. Mars was really busy the first few days of the week. So I think things will settle down a little bit with Moon entering Virgo. Moon in Virgo shows we want to get practical. We want to get organized and maybe integrate quite a bit. Really complementary. I think we can, settle down and process a lot going into Thursday. For Friday, January 17th, Moon continues through Virgo, and today we actually have Sun sextiling Neptune. So this is another energy that's really great for planning or coming up with intentions, goals, plans, etc. Because again, you not only have Sun in Capricorn, which is very practical, very consistent, very focused on attaining future goals. But now that's blending with Neptune and Pisces, which is much more mystical, much more about inspiration and imagination. It's very soulful. So combining both of those, you can have, the vision, the imagination to come up with, a lifestyle or a plan, to come up with that inspiration, but also the very grounded energies of, not just Sun and Capricorn, but Moon and Virgo as well. So you can make that dream a reality. You can come up with a realistic plan today that's not only practical, but it's also emotionally intelligent as well. You can have that kind of intuition guiding you. Really great stuff. I think there's a lot of wisdom in these placements. Definitely. I'm going to continue on though. Saturday, January 18th. This is where we get this really interesting aspect developing, and it's something that really goes through the entire weekend. Basically, what it is Venus and Saturn conjoining at 16 Pisces. Technically, that happens on Saturday, January 18th, and right as Venus and Saturn conjoin at it's like the first part of 16 degrees Pisces. Right as they conjoin there, Mercury reaches 16 degrees Capricorn and sextiles both of them. So kind of a funky aspect. It's a 3-planet aspect. In other words, technically in my notes it shows Venus conjoining Saturn on Saturday, and then Sunday Mercury sextiling both Venus and Saturn, basically at the same time throughout the day. Again, this isn't, you could look at it as 3 aspects. I'm looking at it as 1 aspect. And really, I think it's strengthening a lot of the themes that we've already established for this week. So this week really looks like it's about planning and going ahead, envisioning what do we want our lives to be, and how can we make that happen? And I think this is really echoing kind of the same thing. So Venus conjunct Saturn in Pisces, it's saying to get real, let's create something beautiful. Venus is exalted in Pisces, so the pleasure is there, the imagination, the desire is definitely there. It's readily available. But with Venus conjunct Saturn, I think this is very complementary because it's grounding it. It's saying, that's great to have some kind of huge dream or imagination, but is it realistic? How can we actually achieve this? There's that constraint from Saturn, which again, in this case, I think this is actually really positive. Many people with Venus and Pisces will complain that it's almost like the pleasure from Venus goes off the rails. It's almost too much of a good thing with Venus and Pisces. So Saturn can add some kind of structure and discipline. Saturn can add some constraints that can be very balancing for Venus. I think Venus and Saturn, although they tend to be very different in their themes, with Venus being so positive and Saturn tending to be so challenging, I think their energies actually blend together very readily. Both have connections to Libra, for instance. So in other words, like basically Venus and Saturn together, they want to create some kind of, like, you can create beauty from structure. Sometimes it takes structure and discipline and maybe even strict guidelines to create beauty. I was just talking about this aspect to someone he's living in an HOA, so everything is like very picturesque, but he was talking about how there's all these crazy rules, and we were saying how that's kind of like Venus conjunct Saturn, all these rules and strictness, but it may or may pay off depending on, for me, since I don't live there, I found it very beautiful since I don't have to deal with any of the rules. I can just come and I don't have to deal with the Saturn part. I can just enjoy the aesthetic of everything. But anyway, the point is, sometimes it takes that strictness or that dedication to create beauty. So I think that's a really beautiful conjunction. But it's highlighted even further with the sextiles from Mercury. So again, it's all about like mixing water with Earth this week. It's all about mixing Pisces with Capricorn, Venus with Saturn, for instance. And this is even further exemplified by Mercury and Capricorn sextiling Venus and Saturn. So again, it's saying, let's get real. We have these dreams, we have this vision. Let's get real with it. Let's actually make it happen. Let's talk about it. Let's make a plan. Let's make a guideline. So for instance, like, let's say you want to be physically beautiful and that's your dream. That's what you truly want. Okay, well, it may take, I don't know, like consistency, dedication to exercise or diet maybe, or whatever it is, intermittent fasting. I'm not a dietitian, but you get what I'm saying. Or maybe, I don't know, you want that good job, you want the good car. There's something, we can indulge in physical pleasures sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that, but what does it take? It may take responsibility or maturity to actually make that happen. So I think that's really what this aspect is trying to say. But yeah, so again, this is another really great one for coming up with a dream, thinking about your intentions. What do you want? What's your plan? What's your goal? What's your intention? And maybe even further, how will you achieve those things? I think this is really great stuff, great energy for planning all of this. And one last major headline. So let's talk about Sunday, January 19th. So again, that whole aspect really takes up the entire weekend. I want to make that very clear. So great, the entire weekend is great for planning, goal setting, etc. But Sunday, actually, let me see. So first of all, right around midnight, between Saturday and Sunday, like Saturday night, Moon will leave Virgo and enter Libra. And so depending on your time zone, it may be Saturday or Sunday technically, but basically for most of us, especially on the East Coast of the United States, we'll have Moon in Libra basically all day Sunday. So very harmonious. I think Moon tends to do very well in Libra. We tend to be a little bit more reserved, more patient, more introspective as well with Moon in Libra. But what's really interesting is Sun leaves Capricorn and enters Aquarius today as well. It looks like that happens kind of late in the day, Eastern time, somewhere in the PM. I don't know exactly. But the point is, Sun is already leaving Capricorn, entering Aquarius. So I just can't believe Capricorn season is coming to an end already. I feel like we just had the sun enter Capricorn. But yeah, it's been, I think so much has happened during these, 4-ish weeks, 4.5 weeks. So much has happened, not just for myself, but I think for many others as well. Um, so yeah, sun entering Aquarius. I told my mom about this, and she was like, "Is that good or bad?" And I wasn't entirely sure how to answer exactly. Sun is in detriment in Aquarius, so that would indicate, it's still, it's the second winter sign. It's the middle of winter basically in the northern hemisphere. So that can represent a challenging time. But in many ways, I do think Aquarius is similar to Capricorn because it's, Aquarius is the second sign after the winter solstice. So it's another sign where it is still very dark, generally speaking, but the light is returning very rapidly, actually. The light is starting to return even faster now. And I think that's why, Aquarius also has so much to do with the future and, envisioning plans and goals and dreams and things like that. Also, there tends to be this theme where in Capricorn we tend to be very, independent and goal oriented. But at some point, being so goal oriented, you may need to collaborate with others, right? So by the time you get to Aquarius, there tends to be more camaraderie, or there's a sense of, can we work together? Who shares my dream, or who has a dream that kind of like fits into mine like a puzzle piece. That's how you can really achieve the biggest dreams, the biggest goals, right? By working together. So then, now there's these themes of community that get involved as well. With Sun in detriment in Aquarius, this is an outcast sign. Happy birthday, Aquarius, by the way. I don't know, did I say happy birthday to the Capricorns? I don't remember, but too late now. Let's go forward. But with Aquarius, with Sun in detriment in Aquarius, Sun represents the individuality, the ego. So with Sun in detriment here, it's very strange. Aquarius is seen as a very rebellious sign, and it certainly can be. But I think Aquarius is very painfully aware of the expectations of the group, the expectations of society. What does everyone else want? What is everyone else thinking and feeling? And I know Aquarius doesn't come across as the most, sappy, sympathetic sign all the time. They can come across cold or harsh. But they do have that awareness of others, and they're very painfully aware of their differences from, everyone else, from the group as well. So really, it can be a struggle. We tackle themes of individuality here, but really what that looks like for each person is different. Just like the sun, just like any transit, really. Where does Aquarius fall in your chart? What house is that? What is it? The top of your chart? Is it the bottom? That's really what's going to be what truly defines your experience with Sun in that area. But yeah, lots to talk about next week as we go. Suddenly we have this burst of air energy with Moon in Libra and Sun in Aquarius late Sunday. So a lot more detachment now. I think this is really beautiful. I think things progress in a certain way for a reason. We have so much earth and water throughout most of the week. So again, really great at coming up with those strong plans and goals, those visions. But now as we add this burst of air energy late Sunday, going into the next week, now we can be a little bit more fluid, a little bit more adaptable, a little bit more spontaneous, and that may be really great for maybe modifying our goals even further, or when it comes to, I don't know, getting active, getting spontaneous in order to start achieving those goals. There's a lot of mental energy that's coming to us, so we'll talk about that more next week. Sun also has to conjoin Pluto, so that's gonna be really intense next week as well. But yeah, I hope you join me next week. Otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic week. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.